by the tribunals or courts, this dispensation is very minimal, so it's safe to assume this is the safest and the sure voices of the Nigerian masses. So you think that's the only, on paper, where they could do it. But you see, there's some people should get this straight. Restructuring is not disintegration of this country. I don't know why Mr. President is trying to bring about a foreclosure to this issue. We have to restructure. I'm an advocate of restructuring. I would say this, and I'll always lean towards this, whatever he says. Chalanga says that restructuring would not solve all our problems, but it's a right step in the right direction. I'll cite instances. Even criminal justice system in Nigeria is a call for restructuring. The northern region is still under the criminal penal code. I don't know the last time that has been amended. The south, the other parts of the country are operating when the criminal justice is subject to criminal Justice Act, amended in 2005 or thereabout, or 2007. And you look at issues like this, it calls for restructuring. You talk about, to some people restructuring means more states. To some people restructuring means special status for their state or region. Some people it's even access to controlling of their solid minerals or what have you. Like I've been saying, it comes to me at real. If Brazil, as a nation, could earn $3 billion from banana exportation, and you have a particular region in this country that's so blessed with agriculture, you see the fantastic that they're doing with rice and what have you. If the northern Nigeria now gets serious about rice exportation, they could feed the whole of West Africa. Now, that is not regulated by the government. And some people are making huge foreign earnings from it. But as a government...
Including export of cotton too.
Cotton. But
there's no record of that.
And it's not regulated. But I happen, let me say in my state in Osun State, but I'm from Ogun State, I wish I'm from Osun. And my grandfather or forefathers have this parcel of land, rich with all sorts of minerals, is rumored Osun State have. I cannot touch it because it's regulated by the state. So these are things we need. These are things that some people want to bring to restructure, and we've been restructuring for a very long time. Because during the advent of democracy in 1999, Northern Nigeria started Sharia law, implemented, established ISBA calls all around the state. They've set the pedestal for restructuring too.
It's all right.
So we need to restructure. The president should calm down. We're not breaking this country. He should just calm down.
It appears that even the president and his party don't seem to be on the same line where restructuring is concerned, because the APC has already started a public hearing across the country to find out the pulse of Nigerians about restructuring. But how do you see this happen by passing the National Assembly? Because there is still a constitution, and within the ambit of that constitution, not much can be done without the endorsement of that body.
I believe what the committee set up by APC is doing is just to...
It's buying time.
It's a
I
damage
didn't say that.
I'm saying that it's buying time.
it's a damage control.
No, gather information, go to the field.
Oh, you know what we want. It's not rocket science. It's there now. Everybody knows what we need.
Maybe they want it better structured, so that all these views will now be...
Already we have seen some level of division. The Northwest, apart from Kaduna, doesn't want restructuring.
But Northeast is...
because it's never had a shot at the presidency.
But my concern is, how do we now have an organized form of what people are calling referendum? Because referendum in and of itself cannot take place as we speak right now, except the National Assembly endorses it.
No, even they amend the constitution to give room or make room for referendum before we can now. That means he probably waits for when the president will give his assent on the amendment. And that might be at the next dispensation. So you can go.
Everything still goes to will still go to the National Assembly.
I know.
And so asking National Assembly, asking the people to forward their views to National Assembly, is still in order. You see, still in order, because it will require an amendment of the 1999 Constitution as amended, or they will keep amending and amending.
Do you see the National Assembly having the body language to support restructuring?
I think they will have no option from the agitation here and there. And mind you, it seems not to be limited to the South alone. I mean, if you really
yeah. Former President Barack Obama made a statement. He says, elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. The individuals that you're voting before the next election, they are the ones in power. They are the ones who will take decisions. and they can take decisions that will elongate their tenure also. What I'm trying to say is this.
Directly, indirectly?
Yeah, a lot of the people in the National Assembly are concerned about
Re-election.
tenure after 2019. Will this new idea stop us from presenting ourselves again? Will somebody come up with something radical and say anybody who has been in so and so position, could that be part of the restructuring, for example? Say anybody who has done so much will not come again, and then you have enough radicals who can who can say, let's push this through, and then they now don't have a future in politics. In politics as elites of this country. However, one way I always think is that, okay, let's have this, and I said, from date so much, this new constitution takes effect. After your election, your tenure will have ended. This thing will now take effect. It's not going to be like with immediate effect, and then we gradually face ourselves into it. Just like Britain is facing itself out of EU.
If they don't change their mind.
If they don't change their mind.
Sorry, I want to say something. You see, there are quick ways or quick measures to get about restructuring. The explicit legislative list can be a first start. The National Assembly, as much as they've been blackmailed, they set the tone for restructuring. They brought about independent candidacy. They're doing one or two things, or they've done one or two things. Now, if you take away, we are not taking everything away from the federal government, because you have to have a unified army. We have to have the foreign policy of every country should be vested with the federal government, finance and health. Beyond that, we probably need to touch section 80 to 85 in some of the constitution that talks about public revenue. Those are for you can achieve restructuring through constitutional amendments when people genuinely or with all sincerity of purpose want to achieve that. APC going setting up committee, they are just diversionary. Didn't they know they have to go to the National Assembly when they were campaigning with restructuring?
Let me get Otumba's final opinion on this issue before we move to other issues. You've been through almost all the countries of the world. The question that is often asked is, from what you have seen, is restructuring going to solve the challenge here back at home? The economic challenge, the security challenge, the fact that the average Nigeria is not enjoying the quality of life that he or she deserves?
Definitely it will not solve all the problems, because going back to the Kano thing, even before actualizing a Biafra, you can see the division within. The man from Port Harcourt, I was in Port Harcourt for Guild of Editors conference about 2 weeks ago, and we went to the street, interacted with people, and you need to hear what the ordinary Port Harcourt person, the ordinary Rivers man is saying. Meanwhile, in the media, you hear people like Kano claiming that the whole of Southeast and South. So even within Igbo land, there are divisions. So this one is so going back to your question, restructuring will definitely not solve all our problems. But what we need to do is like the war being waged by the current administration now, the war against corruption. It has to be more. It has to be deeper. Not necessarily. It shouldn't be restricted to public office holders alone. Right? I drove from Ikorodu to this place. I know what I faced, even on the road, the police. And what have you? I learned Hong Kong, for instance, had the worst police, the most corrupt police in the world at a time. But when the government appreciated that fact, realized that fact, and faced the police service there, restructured it, re-engineered it, today, I've gathered that the police in Hong Kong is one of the best, one of the finest, one of the best paid. That's a typical example. I'm just citing the police as an example. So the restructuring will not solve all our problems, but at least if you take us back to the past when things were going on very well, people kept referring to the 60s, and it worked in Nigeria.
So we saw a picture of Ibadan in the 60s.
Beautiful.
Under Awolowo. And then we were wondering, is this Britain? I mean, no. It was even finer than...
Yes.
I live in Ibadan.
Finer than what it is.
Boy. So I understand what I can read what you're saying.
Let's move away from that very quickly. In the course of the week, a letter that was supposed to be private became public. And it was between the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources and Mr. President. According to him, he made certain allegations, huge allegations, and we can't read all of it for you right now. But then the minister refused. I hope we can show you the pictures of the petroleum minister, Dr. Ibe Kachiku's visit to Mr. President at the Aso Rock, where he refused to disclose the outcome of discussions he had with President Muhammadu Buhari after their closed-door meetings. Dr. Kachiku, who walked past journalist corridor at exactly 12:53 p.m., was asked about details of the meeting, and then you saw him there saying no comment when pressured by journalists to comment on what actually transpired indoors. The meeting comes 3 days after a letter the minister wrote to President accusing the NNPC Group Managing Director of insubordination was leaked and went viral online. In a letter dated August 30, Dr. Kachiku complained to the president that the NNPC boss, Mekante Baru, had sidelined the NNPC board, which the minister chairs, among other allegations. Let's begin by finding out here, first and foremost, if indeed the president has a working relationship with his ministers. I mean, how can a minister of state for petroleum in his letter identify that he's not been able to reach the president since he got back from the UK?
I think it was unintended, but we got to find that there's a lacuna between the office of the president and his ministers. And don't forget, the president came back, I think, was it August?
August 2021.
After 104 days, and
in hibernation.
Yeah, and some people have called cabal took over the place and started running. And don't forget that the chief of staff of the president is also a director of NNPC. He's a sitting director of NNPC. For me, it tells me that the president probably had no trust, no confidence in the minister of state. This man has been
NNPC for a very long
GMD
time.
for NNPC. He was also, at the sense, he combined the two positions. Then you now pushed him upstairs and made him minister of state. And then you now constituted a board and then put your own private secretary to be on the board. You are telling me straight away that you
want to watch me.
Yeah, that's the way I understand it. And the job was very, very well done. And then opportunity came. 104 days, Mr. President was not available. So this gentleman took fullest advantage of this and was just walking straight with this one-man cabal, that maybe he was getting messages across to Mr. President, to the discomfort of the Minister of State, who should actually be the one to brief
relay the message to Mr.
one
President.
as Minister of State, the next person to the Minister of Petroleum, who is the President, as well as being the chairman of the board of NNPC. Two major things that the man has said. One, those appointments that were skewed towards a particular segment of the country. That's one. Two, $25 billion contract awarded without the board. Even a small company, there are some things you don't do. And this is way ahead, above what the GMD could do all on his own. Yet it went partly because, I guess, the cabal, the one-man cabal, who is the chief of staff of the president, said, don't worry, go ahead, I will talk with the president about it. Regardless of the input.
Procedures.
Place down procedures. Again, this anti-corruption drive, breaching procedural arrangements, is also corruption. So if this president really wants to be seen as somebody who is anti-corruption, let him get on the higher moral ground, even in his dealings with processes in his office.
So in his letter, the issue of being tribalistic also cropped up, mentioning the fact that many perceive him to be against the North,
the anti-North,
working for militants and all of that.
Right.
I mean, one would have thought that the president already appointed Kachiku. One would have thought that all of these would have been checked before that appointment was finalized? Because what is obviously playing out here is the fact that there's no trust in this